What is going on, my friends, and welcome back to another video on the channel. I know it's late. This is a good evening video. It's no good morning. It's a good evening video, but we are seeing something pretty impressive, at the least, happening in the market right now. Seeing that Bitcoin is currently sitting right around $35,000 after a massive fall off at this point due to some news that we did just get from the Russia-Ukraine situation, in which Russian President Vladimir Putin has declared that they will go to war/invade Ukraine. Now, this was going to be televised. It was a televised address that we did get not too long ago, saying that Russia will conduct a military operation in eastern Ukraine. Now, he did say that their goal is not to occupy the country. They're not trying to take over Ukraine, but they want to go ahead and actually demilitarize them. They want to go ahead and start to take away some of their military efforts that they have there, of course, which is basically the same thing in a way. Now, what we can see that I think is what's leading to this market really seeing some pretty dramatic effects is that Putin warned other countries that any attempt to interfere with the Russian action would lead to consequences they have never seen. Now, of course, we did see that the United Nations, basically the big conglomerate of all of some of the largest powers in the world, including the United States, did go ahead and say that they would be kind of putting on some sanctions towards Russia if they did go ahead with this, things that would kind of limit their economy and limit their ability to really operate. And so, of course, as that does happen, that is in terms of interference with the action in which they are taking. And so people, I guess, are starting to somewhat de-risk from crypto because they are worried about what these consequences that they have never seen could be. Now, some people are saying this is a bluff. It definitely does not seem to be. I mean, it very possibly could be, but we can see here that they have over 24 warships in the Black Sea, which represents nearly 100% of the combat power needed for a large-scale invasion. And they also have, I think it's said down here, over 150,000 troops near Ukraine's borders. So overall, it does seem as if this is something that they are actively engaging in. It seems like Putin is very serious. Could it be a big bluff? I don't really know. It's not really my goal here or my job to say whether I think he's bluffing or not. I have no idea. But it is my job here to kind of get a gauge of the magnitude of this pullback and correction we're seeing in the market and give my opinion on where I think this is going. Okay, so now that we know what's going on here, I definitely do think that we need to focus a little bit more on macro environmental effects and less on technical analysis at this point. But the technicals are always important, in my opinion, to gauge when the buyers are stepping in and the overall magnitude of how much of an effect can this have. Okay, so the first thing that I actually want to do, we usually do start here on TradingView, kind of paying attention to the Fibonacci's. And of course, we are going to do so as well, but we are actually going to be jumping over to Bookmap in a second here to gauge what the buyers are doing, because I think that that's going to be the most important aspect of this. Okay, so starting over on Bitcoin, what we can see is, of course, we have crashed into our macro Fibonacci between the 618 to 786. Now, I told you guys when we were up here that this was a possibility. I said, if anything happens, any inflation news, any Russian news, if anything pretty significant happens, do expect us to crash back down towards these levels. This is the level that we need to hold. It's, and realistically, if we don't hold this, there's a strong chance of us pushing back towards $32,900. And I think that still holds true. Okay, so one thing we can see is that the 0.786 level is an absolute battle right now. The bulls, the bears, they are fighting like crazy to hold the 0.786 level at $35,300. And I think where we get the next daily close at is really going to be a super huge determinant on where we go over the next week or two. Okay, now if we do start to see this thing retracing and we see a rather large wick, and we close maybe back up towards $36,000 as the reaction to this news does start to kind of smooth over a little bit and people aren't necessarily as panicky, then yeah, sure, we may still be looking good to bounce off this zone and continue upwards. But at this point, we still do have to, kind of factor in the fact that some people are sleeping at this point. A lot of places, especially over in Europe, are not awake at this point, and when they do wake up, it might trigger another one of these larger capitulation, moves to the downside. Okay, so what I would go ahead and say at this point is that as we have seen the price now come down and lose the 786, at least for now, that is a sign that the door back towards $32,000 is open. And it would take a very, very significant amount of buying volume at this point to really boost the price up. And with the shakiness in the economy, it is a little bit hard to kind of get the idea that that is going to happen. Okay, so if we do go ahead and we look at Bookmap really quickly, one thing we can see is the liquidity in the market at certain areas. Now, what is a good sign is the fact that we're not really seeing an extreme amount of liquidity or buy orders to the top side. I mean, a decent amount towards 36,500 with 90 Bitcoin sitting in on this order book here. But what we can see is that the buyers are there and they are willing to step in at these lower levels, significantly higher than we saw yesterday. So yesterday when we looked, there was a little bit of liquidity here at 35,000. There was a little bit of liquidity sitting towards 31,000, but realistically nothing extreme. But what we can see is that at this given point, even if we do start to continue back towards the downside, there is a pretty substantial amount of liquidity in the market. At $35,000, we see 170 Bitcoin currently sitting there ready in buy orders. We see some more at 33,000, nothing at 34,000, so I do think we would crash through 34 pretty quick. But we have 33,000 sitting pretty strong, 32,000 even stronger, and 31,000 sitting with another 149 Bitcoin over in the order book. And if we do zoom all the way down, 30,000 is currently sitting with about 563 Bitcoin currently, which is a substantial amount of liquidity. And so what that tells me is that although we are seeing some pretty bad news at this point, and although we have seemingly lost the 0.786 level and now opened up this door to revisit the $32,000 area, the buyers are still confident. The buyers are still there. It is very clear that there is still liquidity to the downside here, and there is going to be some type of support establishment and resistance from the bottom side. I know resistance is usually, when you work up to a level, but the bulls are going to be resisting that move. They are going to be fighting back, and I am still pretty confident that though this is bad news, and though it may start to get ugly and we may see a pullback towards 32,300 to 32,900 and revisit these range lows here, I am still pretty confident that our bulls are going to step in, especially as we are starting to see some pretty strong extensions to the downside, right? If we look at something like the Bollinger Bands on a daily perspective, we are extremely extended into the bottom here, and usually at these points, similar to what we saw back here, similar to here and here, we will usually see some pretty at least solid recovery eventually, okay? So it is bad. It's definitely not a good thing. No one wants to see war. No one wants to see military actions, and no one really wants to see something like this play out, but there's nothing we can really do to control that. We can simply just react to it in a way. And of course, what we need to be doing at this point is gauging whether the buyers are willing to step in and the magnitude of this fall. How low can it go so we can be reactionary in a sense to get ahead of it and hopefully take advantage of those moves, okay? So right now, I definitely would not be doing anything. I wouldn't be doing any buys. I wouldn't be doing any sales. I'm just going to sit back and watch this happen. And the reason for that being, of course, is you never really know what the reaction to this is going to be. I am very confident considering the fact that we can clearly see there are buyers still in the market. I am confident with that. And so for that reason, I am confident enough to hold my positions, as I don't think that we're going to, I don't think we'll see another 50% fall from here. I don't see us going under $20,000. And so I am willing to continue to just, let my portfolio drown for a little while. But I'm definitely not doing any buying because we don't know what type of effect this will have on something like Bitcoin, because it's realistically the first time we've seen, say, like war threats really affecting the price, right? So for that reason, of course, again, we are seeing bad news. Russia's news is what did this crash, but we are again seeing that the buyers are willing to step in and they are still fighting at some of these lower levels. So I'm not expecting this to be the one that really drives us to say low $20,000 to mid $20,000 range, but this does definitely have an effect that could push us towards $32,000 to even $30,000, and I do think we need to be prepared for that. So of course, that is just the update of the night. We are in the middle of the free fall, so there's not too much I can tell you guys, but I wanted to at least give you something of an update and say, hey, we do have a lot of buyers. We are still looking strong above $30,000, and for that reason, I'm not too stressed out right now, okay? So with that being said, that is going to be about it for tonight's video. Of course, you guys should get some rest if you are in the US, and if you are just waking up, well, I hope you have a fantastic day, even with what's going on in the market. It might serve you quite well to just not look at it, but hey, to each their own. So with that being said, of course, I will be uploading again in the morning, so do stay tuned for that, and I will see you all next time. Peace.